So into April, we've got Parannoul to see the next part of the dream. Um, this album was pretty special. I feel like there was a lot of buzz about this all over the internet when this first dropped. A lot of people talking about this, getting a lot of attention, and then I feel like it just kind of faded from a lot of people's memory. Just as usual with this sort of stuff, especially when an album comes out early in the year. There's definitely dropping your album in September. You're more likely to kind of get buzz all the way to the end of the year. Whereas people who drop their album in February, like most of the albums I've said this far, if you've heard of them, you've probably gone, "Oh, I forgot about that. I haven't listened to that since." You know what I mean? I like totally forgot some of these albums dropped. Whereas I 100% remember the ones that dropped in like September, and you'll notice that as this list goes on. But anyway, this album came out, had a lot of buzz because this unknown South Korean guy was making this music in his bedroom. Um, it's proper like lo-fi, band camp drop, and yeah, it's pretty good. Like I think it's what makes it good is also what makes it bad, if that makes sense. I.e., it's a lo-fi shoegazy rock album that has incredibly distorted drums all over it that are like samples. Some of the mixing on this thing is like I'm getting tinnitus listening to it. It's just like you can hear high frequencies, you can hear um like fragments, fragmentation isn't the word I'm looking for, but like residue from like bad distortion. You can tell he's just pumping this through like a compressor and a limiter at times. At the same time, that's also kind of what's so charming about it. Like, this is a guy who posted on his Bandcamp saying like I could barely play guitar and all this, and yet he was able to make something that kind of transcended that. But yeah, this is a really nice album. Um, yeah, like I forgot like when I was going through the lists to pick my albums of the year and do this video, I like saw him. I was like, oh my god, was that this year? This is a COVID album as well, if you know what I mean. It's like an album made by someone in their bedroom, themselves, and made by someone who seems to be very isolated and very introverted, has never sort of hit as hard as during the COVID-19 pandemic. But yeah, good album, really good album. Uh, just I think a lot of people should listen to this, and I think you'll know immediately if it's your cup of tea or not. I know as well he's dropped a couple albums since, and I had no idea until I re-listened to this album. Like I was like, oh right, yeah, and saw he's dropped. Is it called like Downfall of the Neon Youth or something? Something in the Neon Youth, and he's dropped something like in the Year of the Cat or something with the cat. Um, one of them I think was a collaborative album though, rather than just him. But yeah, he's continuing to make music. It'd be cool to see if he continues getting attention. Being totally anonymous in this day and age as well is pretty insane. But yeah. Very cool album. A very cool story. I suppose the only kind of disappointing thing is there was no remaster. Like I'm really into sort of lo-fi music, so i.e. like early Elliott Smith or like Daniel Johnson or whoever. But because like there's stuff here that you could fix by just EQing it a little bit and just cleaning it up a little. So it's a shame that when it dropped and was still fresh, that like he couldn't have just sent the stems to a mastering engineer who could maybe fix it up a little bit. Because going on, you know, close like what's it, nearly a year, April, so just over half a year. I doubt we'll see a remaster of this, which is a little bit of a shame. But I suppose maybe his mixing will improve as well. But yeah, just it's one of those albums that was a bit of a like zeitgeist. You know what I mean? It's a bit of a like a moment on social media where people are going like, "Oh my god, have you heard this?" Cool artwork as well. Next, we have Godspeed You, Black Emperor, God's Pay at State's End. This album was a bit of a weird one for me because I kind of listened to it and kind of went, yeah, I don't know. And then I listened to it again and went, oh my god, this is like the best thing I've put out in ages. And then I re-listened to it a few weeks later and went, and I kind of kept going back and forth. And I think it's come down to there's like a few tracks in this thing I love and a few tracks in this thing I could kind of miss. It's definitely not as strong as early Godspeed. Yeah, Job's Lament I've listened to quite a lot. The drums in that are class. Fire at Static Valley as well. Is class. It's really really good. Those like strings are just like that's like a classic Godspeed You Black Emperor sound, isn't it? Like the same thing you heard on Don't Bend Ascend. With tracks like Melodic and stuff. It's that like classic, really drony ambient guitar with like the violins are going, properly. Just the only thing in that range. I don't know how to describe it. There's no other band I've ever heard really pull it off as well as they have to make it that atmospheric. But yeah, good album. I don't think it's amazing, but another sort of one of these lists where you just kind of go like, oh, good stuff. So if you're a Godspeed fan, listen to it. If you're not a Godspeed fan, get into Godspeed because they rock. They're really good. Next up, we've got Nurture by Porter Robinson. So I I like listened to the Spitfire EP. I'm trying to remember if that was the name of it. But the EP he put out way back like 10 years ago when EDM was the genre, when the charts was just filled with like Swedish House Mafia, David Guetta, and so on. And I remember listening to that EP, and it was one of those ones that kind of stood out, against all the sort of crap of like Hardwell. Here was a guy with like genuinely really really nice chords. Some of the sound design was really interesting. Yes, it was a bit dubsteppy at times, but kind of similar to Skrillex, where Skrillex is like clearly a really talented producer who makes stuff worse than his potential often. You know what I mean? Porter Robinson, like when I read that he'd put out an album that loads of people were loving this year, I was like, I can't wait to hear that because I believe that. Unlike the people who came out around him and were making the same music as him, so i.e. Hardwell or Avicii or whoever, I believed that he had the potential to make something really, really good. And I don't think that's what we got. I'm kind of surprised people loved this thing as much as they did. I think like maybe if you were like nostalgic for EDM, if you're like, man, do you remember all those nights um that we'd listen to the same drum presets over and over again at 128? Maybe this hits, but like I don't know. It's just like it was too like I don't know. The sound design wasn't nice enough. Like there'd be these kind of nice piano tunes in it, and then there'd be like tunes that were essentially crap house, but just a bit slower down, or some nice pads, or some nice orchestral sounds. It's just like a bad dance album with like moments of like, oh, that's a nice piano line, and like some nice pads here and there, and there's like it almost sounds like future funk at times, and like again bubblegum pop. It also kind of has elements of like, God, I don't even know. Like, it almost sounds like an anime theme song half the time. Um, and like not a really good one. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I don't know. I absolutely didn't get anything out of this at all. Wind Chimes is not the name of it. The one, it's near the middle of the album, and it's literally like compare that to the song it sounds really like, which is All My Friends by LCD Sound System. Like it's the same, absolutely the same thing. I'd be very surprised if there wasn't some kind of discussion there about copyright. Um, but like All My Friends makes me like feel a lot. It gets me in the feels. Man, if everyone ever said the feels, oh my feelings. Got the feels. And I don't mean catch feels. I mean like the crappy, oh my feelings. Internet art. Man, I don't know. Anyway, those jokes were funny when Porter Robinson put his first EP out. I think that's what I'm trying to say. But anyway, like All My Friends by LCD Sound System is him like pouring his heart out about like growing up and like losing people and like alienation and isolation and stuff. Whereas like the like emotional tracks in this just sound like crappy pop tunes. Um yeah, didn't get this at all. Do you know what actually it sounds like? It sounds like when do you remember that moment when like synth pop became really popular as well, and there was all these bands like MGMT and the Naked and Famous. Actually, it really reminds me of the Naked and Famous Passive Me Aggressive You, that album, right? Which is one of the most underrated albums of the last while. That's a really, really good album. And genuinely, if you liked Nurture, listen to Passive Me Aggressive You. And if after the first 4 or 5 songs, you're not like, oh wait, this is just Nurture but better, then we'll have a conversation. I don't. It's an empty threat. I'm not what I'm going to yell at you. You're allowed to like things, and that's fine. But yeah, I don't know. There was just nothing like to latch on to with this. It was just like some of the sound design was kind of nice. I reckon Porter Robinson would do a pretty good soundtrack for a movie. Um, maybe he should do like some arty movie, and they should get Porter Robinson in. But yeah, this album, sorry. Next up, we've got Topaz Jones. Don't go telling your mama. So this was actually a film and an album as well. I didn't watch the film. I had no idea about the film until well after, but I've listened to the album a few times, especially a few tracks I've listened to quite a lot. This thing is like a kind of funky hip hop R&B thing. I think it's been compared to like Parliament a lot, but it's more like Prince, or some of the tracks are a bit Frank Ocean. But it's really good. I mean, sounding like Prince, Parliament, and Frank Ocean is not a problem with most people, I don't think. So, you know, some, compliment. It's not like he's derivative as well. It's just kind of, reminiscent of that stuff, but his own spin on it and more modern. Kind of reminds me of like Thundercat and stuff as well. Or like kind of Childish Gambino. A little bit, not as in the later stuff that Gambino was doing with like the soul and stuff. Not obviously his early rap stuff, although a little bit of the rap as well. Just loads of really good tracks in this. Amphetamines is class. Um, God, oh, DIAL, dying as a lifestyle, is so good. Yeah, just like, do you know what this is to me? This is like the better version of the Silk Sonic record. Like, it's taking inspiration from all that sort of Stevie Wonder, sort of funky R&B stuff, and doing something more interesting with it. And I just think this is the better version of that. I think, like, I'm going to talk about Silk Sonic later, so that's kind of spoilers, I guess. But yeah, this just felt like a better version of that for me. But I mean, obviously, irregardless of what you thought of Silk Sonic, if you liked it or hated it, check this out. If you like Silk Sonic, then this is basically more of that. I think it's better. If you didn't really like Silk Sonic, this is really good. So listen to it. This is probably up there. Some of my favorite albums of the year as well. Probably top 10, possibly. Lastly, for April, we have Spirit of the Beehive, Entertainment, Death. I would be lying if I said that I didn't listen to this almost entirely because of the artwork. You can just tell. I don't know what it is about the artwork. I looked over because I know the artwork's going to be there, um, but it's not there for me. It's an overlay. See. Anyway, um, no, this thing's insane. This is so good. This is one of these albums that like I had no idea what I was going in for. I heard an album called Spirit of the Bee. I saw the artwork. I saw Spirit of the Beehive, Entertainment, Death, and I thought that's a lot of good words. And I stuck headphones on and listened to this, and oh my god, what a ride! It's basically like a really really good experimental pop album. Apparently they're one of these bands who like they just use the studio as an instrument kind of thing. Like they're a proper band, they properly write songs together, but they just like love pushing boundaries sonically and stuff. But like it's just one of those things where like songs that you listen to and they're 2.5 minutes long, and if you skip forward 30 seconds, it's just a different song, and you can't work out how the hell they got from there to there. It's basically just that. Like it's totally nuts. There's more ideas in one song on this album than there is in some bands' entire albums. Just totally amazing. It's one of those albums as well where you listen to this and you go, whoa, that was a bit insane. And then you listen to something a bit more normal and you're like, oh, the second chorus sounds just like the first chorus. You know what I mean? Like you listen to like a normal band, or a normal pop song, and you're like, oh yeah, it just repeats. Whereas in this thing, they'd be like, oh, you like that? Well, try this, and throw you through a loop. And it's a different tempo and a different time signature and a different chords and they've shifted and just like I just love this thing. This thing was really good. Again, top 10, I think, for sure. What I'm going to do is rewatch this video and count. If on the off chance I've said top 10 times, then I've got my 10 albums of the year. Um, if I say it 5 times or 20 times, then we'll have to have a wee think. Just there's just so much to love about this. Wrong Circle is really good. Give Up Your Life is like funky, but their version of funky. The Server is amazing. Um, God, yeah, like I don't know who they listen to or what they're trying to do or like who their inspiration is. You know, it's like Elephant Six Collective, so like Neutral Milk Hotel, Olivia Tremor Control, and stuff. But then it's kind of like Beach House or like Sleepy Party People as well. Yeah, just amazing. Really, really good. I don't, I have nothing but great things to say about this. What a fucking good record. Next up, we've got May, the month that is, and we've got I've got this in vinyl, and we've got Cavalcade. Which way am I holding this? We've got Cavalcade, by Black Midi, their second album to knock off our May. This was another one for me that a lot of people didn't like this as much as their first album. But I'm actually kind of completely the opposite. Like Schlagenheim took ages to hit for me for some reason. Like I watched that live performance that everyone was watching. I can't, was it the basement or was it, I can't remember. But that like performance that went viral of these kids rocking out, and that was really good. And then it didn't translate to record for me. Um, Whereas this album, Cavalcade, just feels like the first album to me, but everything's better. Like the mixing and recording is better. The If you thought his ramblings and vocals were mental in the first album, they're up another level in this one. If you thought that like the dissonant guitar and the big heavy bass was good, there's that times 100. Now we've got insane levels of brass and jazz arrangements in some tracks. We've got really, really pretty acoustic tracks. We've got like the drums again. You have to have a good drummer. That's the Slint Black Country New Road rule, as I said. I love this thing. I absolutely love Cavalcade. Just an album I knew the second I stuck it on, I was like, oh my god, I need to own this. I need to listen to this all the time. It's good when like I love this thing so much that I now like the first album more. Like the first album went from like a 7 or 8 out of 10 to like a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. Like this made me totally rethink the band and like made me go, wait a minute, I love Black Midi. I don't just like them, I love them. Um, yeah, I mean, if you like dissonant jazz fusion, experimental, hard hitting rock with bizarre vocals, absolutely, this is the album for you. Going from Hogwash and Boulder Dash, which is, I mean, as fun to say as it is to listen to. It's a proper mad track. Going from that to Everyone Loves Ascending Fourths as like a closer sums up everything that's great about this band. Just go listen to Black Midi. Everyone should listen to Black Midi. Bit of a 180. Next up, we've got Olivia Rodrigo, Sour. Sorry, that's the Northern Irish accent. One syllable, sour. Half hour par, sour by Olivia Rodrigo. So, I hate this thing. I saw a lot of people saying there's a lot of memes and stuff about like your Spotify Wrapped and people sort of having like Kendrick, J. Cole, Drake, and then having like Olivia Rodrigo, and then be like, oh, none of my homies won't think I'm cool because I jam out to this girl. But like, I didn't even get that because like I don't even get the appeal, and I'm not the target audience Olivia Rodrigo. I don't think they were necessarily thinking of me when they made this album. But having said that, I don't know. Like, I've listened to this. I listened to this pretty much when it came out, and didn't like it at all. And I re-listened to it about a week ago out of curiosity, kind of like, oh, was it too negative? And the second I heard that opening track, which is um the da 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 da, which is like the most overdone riff. I'm not so like if it sounds like something else, therefore I can't ever listen to it. But I feel like the only enjoyment I get out of this album is just working out what other song it sounds like. I don't think I can name like a more generic pop album than this. I'm genuinely trying to. The sad ballads are basically just Bad Lord, Phoebe Bridger type songs. The faster ones are like sort of princess pop punk, pop princess CDs that we had back in the day. They're like bad Avril Lavigne. I know there's already been ties about it sounding like Paramore, but like I don't know how to describe it. Like I didn't like pop punk growing up, when pop punk was everywhere. I didn't like it. And hearing like the next generation embrace it for TikTok is so weird because I didn't like it the first time. Again, I suppose like I said about EDM, I don't miss when sort of badly made EDM was like all over the charts. So now if that was all over TikTok, people would be like, why have I got like bad versions of like Avicii's Hey Brother? Anyway, this is so off the point. I hate this album. I hate Czar. One step forward, three steps back is pretty cute. Um, it's very much sounds like it was written by like an 11-year-old, and it's like one of those YouTube videos that goes viral. But it's kind of cute for what it is. That tune, Jealousy, or just Jealousy, I can't remember. Is the best song in the album. Whereas I think I hate the rest of it. I really do. Good for you. The TikTok is the best bit. You can tell they wrote that bit, and then we're sort of like, oh, the verse should be different. And it's just two different songs, and there's no payoff to the build up. It's just like, here's a bad Kelly Clarkson song with like a verse that's so immemorable that they might as well have just went 3 seconds later and then cut to the chorus again, because like absolutely no one is listening to that song going, oh, I love the verse. Again, I'm not the target audience, and I get that like melodrama is normal. In teenagehood you gain a bit more perspective as you mature, but like I don't know, I can't get past lyrics like I've never felt like this, and you're like, yeah, probably not, you're a new human. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. Like, it's not, I'm not saying that like, oh, you can only write good music once you're 20. I wrote music. I have EPs from when I was like 15, 14. But like you can just kind of tell that loads of these songs were written by a group of people rather than her. If I'm incorrect about that, I'd love to know that actually, but it just sounds like it was written by like a committee to be like, what would people like? Because to me, it would be like me writing a song now that's like, oh, I remember my youth, and people would be like, man, you're in your youth. Like, you don't get to say that. Tom Waits can say his youth. Bob Dylan can. Like, I don't get to. Yeah, it's basically female Ed Sheeran to me. It's just bad, like generic pop tunes, clearly written by like 10 people to be like, what is the easiest, most digestible pop music we can make that will sell? It's bad. It's called sour, but really it's like bland, tasteless, overly sweetened water, like sugar water. I would say is the taste of this album. Like a cup of water with a spoonful of sugar stirred into it, and you drink that, and you're like, oh, it's water with sugar in it. This isn't very good. The metaphor's clunky, but I think we'll move on. Got quite a lot came out in May. So next up, we've got The Off Season by J. Cole. I don't want to sit too long in this album. I think J. Cole is the absolute definition of mediocrity. Um, I just don't think he's ever made anything that's more than like a 6 or 7 out of 10. The guy's clearly talented. He's got some good flows. He's got some good wordplay at times. He's got like there seems to be enough talent there and enough sort of going on that maybe he could make something decent. But like everything I've ever heard by him, this is my reaction. Okay, do you know what I mean? Like it's just whatever. So I kind of went into the off season not exactly excited for it. I wasn't exactly hyped, and I wasn't disappointed expecting that. It's bizarre, this album. Like his actual rapping is so as in not the actual bars, not the actual lyrics, just his flow and how he's approached every track and so on is probably the best bit. Like his understanding of where like his voice should be and structuring songs and stuff is quite good. Generally, whereas like his actual lyrics are just so uninteresting or so bland, or if they're not bland, they've stuck out because it's a bad lyric. Um, and the production is like it's really bizarre. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the mix or if it's a choice. Um, but like so much of it sounds really flat, but it kind of shouldn't. Like so many of the tracks have these like huge sort of sonic space. That's not the word I'm looking for. Some of these songs have like a huge selection of sounds, and it'll be like big drums and a big bass and like some nice leads and some chords and like some high stuff and some blah 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 the whole deal, right? But yeah, despite all that, it's like it almost sounds like it's in mono, right? Like it almost sounds like he's doing karaoke over like a YouTube recording, and they've recorded that. He sounds so much higher than all of the instrumentals, and it's not even the fact that he's so much louder than them. It's the fact that they sound like nothing hits. Do you know what I mean? Like no big cymbal or no bass line actually goes. Oh God, I felt that. It's it's so like unpronounced that it doesn't matter how good the beat is. If it's a really nice beat, it's mixed so uninterestingly that it kind of gets filtered out as background music, which is weird because like again, his actual songwriting in terms of how he fits in the flow, like how his flow sorry fits in the song, is actually good. It's one of his strengths, and yet it's not. Except the song "Applying Pressure," which has like MLG air horns and those like 70s synth laser sounds, pew pew pew, sounds which are like insanely panned all over the place. So you've like, and that's like the only thing that like perks up your ears. Instead, you just kind of have these beats that are really um out of the way, and then him rapping whatever. To summarize how I feel about J. Cole, if you hear this lyric, that was me in '08, seeing no cake, not even on dates. I celebrated my birth. And if you think that birthday line, because he's not getting his cake on dates where he celebrates his birth, if you hear that and you're like, that's fire, the off season's probably one of your favorites this year. If, like me, you hear that and you think that's clunky bullshit, this album's not very good. It's not bad. It's just not interesting. It's nothing. It's a nothing album. I don't recommend it. I listened to it and I don't feel any different for doing so. Um, so, SAR was bad. I genuinely didn't enjoy listening to that. This was just something. You know what I mean? This was just like a Monday memo. You know, it was just something that happened. Next up, we have Sweet Trips, A Tiny House in Secret Speeches, Polar Equals. This is kind of like shoegazy dream pop, I guess. But it kind of goes through a lot of different genres, a lot of fusion stuff going on here. This album, it's experimental in the way that like it's got loads of sounds that are like going through filters and going from back and forth and stuff. Just kind of soundscapey, but like the actual songwriting and stuff's pretty, you know, like easy to digest. It's not particularly challenging. So you'll have these kind of dream poppy sort of pads and sounds and stuff, but then in sound we found each other. that song. You've got like a really really good funky bass line. Like it's just kind of pushing the envelope a little bit, but not too much. Really digestible, really really good. I was a big fan of this album. Next up in May, is what might be a pretty big hot take. Um, Bo Burnham's Inside. So although technically not an album, I'm going to count it just because like so many people were listening to the soundtrack. So this came out as I said in May. I think it came out about a week before my birthday, and I saw loads of people saying it was really good. As in the film, the Netflix comedy, and so for the birthday in the COVID times, my girlfriend, my partner was like, "Hey, why don't we get a takeaway and you can choose whatever choose a film and we'll watch it." And I was like, "Hey, I've seen loads of people say the new Bo Burnham special is really good. Do you want to watch that?" And she's like, "Yep, that sounds class." So I listened to Bo Burnham when I was a kid. I remember being 11 or whatever age it was, and I had a phone for which had like you could only save two songs on it, and you had to do it via Bluetooth, and one of them was New Math. You know, edgy sort of. I didn't understand half the lyrics anyway. But yeah, it was Bo Burnham was like an integral part of early YouTube, wasn't he? And then when What came out, I listened to or watched it, and I thought it was better than what I thought it was going to be awful because like most people when they do these kind of comedy specials like they change format like this like we've seen it time and time again where actors or comedians internet comedians and stuff try to move to a different format. It wasn't good. And I watched What and I was like, wow, the staging stuff's really interesting, it's really nice, it's really whatever. Didn't think it was hilarious. I probably didn't laugh, if you know what I mean, but I thought like, oh, like it's cool to see someone doing something a bit different. But then I watched Make Happy and I hated that because I was just like, oh, it's just What again, and it kind of made me go like, oh, and it was probably the mood I watched it. Like I watched What being like, oh, I'll see what this is like, and ended up like continuing to watch it. Whereas I watched Make Happy being like, oh, I wonder if this will be good, and was like, no. Um, so inside, I went in, was actually excited to watch it, and I sat down, and about 20 minutes in, all I could think was, this is awful. I hate this. I hate this so much. It wasn't funny. And I understand this is really a lot of people like really connected to this, so I do apologize. But I watched this and there was just these moments where there was these like lazy jokes where there was like quick cuts where he'd be like, oh, it'd be like me doing a joke being like, I think my camera's about to run out of, and you're like, ah, I get it. Battery was the next word, but it was like lazy jokes like that. I can't remember what they were, and a lot of him lying around being like, I think that this is bad, right? And then white woman Instagram, whatever it's called, came on, and I was like, this is horrendous. This is so unfunny. This is like it's like a bad like BuzzFeed article. Like it's so horrendous. And then it tries to get deep in like the third verse where it's like, but white women are actually more complicated than pumpkin spice. Sometimes they deal with things that are complicated emotions, and you're like, yeah, I know. Like I don't. That shouldn't be an observation you make. It just felt really pseudo deep, and like what really wrecked me about it was it wasn't funny, which a lot of that's not a thing because it's not really a comedy special as people can say, but it's not funny, right? So your enjoyment can't be from comedy. Your enjoyment must be from relatability, from him saying something, him telling some story that you attach yourself to, or something else must be the draw. And for me, he spent the time talking about how hard lockdown was and locking himself in this room was. But then he'd almost wink at the camera and be like, but not really, I'm filming, but I'm sad. But I'm sad on camera, so I make money. So Jeff Bezos is bad, but I also make money by lying to people. Therefore, I'm as bad as Jeff Bezos, but I'm not actually as bad as Jeff Bezos. Winky. It was so like, I'm pretending, I'm this, but I'm more meta, more meta, more meta. I don't know. It just took me out of it. Like there was no emotional connection. he's not telling like an actual honest story. He's made up this story that he spent, months locked in this like little side house when like no he didn't. We know he didn't. The whole thing, I couldn't there was no emotional relatability. There was nothing authentic about it. And for me personally, although maybe people just like to see themselves depicted, oh, I was in lockdown too, that's relatable, that makes me happy that someone else is discussing how hard it was. At times, for me, I was watching it going, this is so self-centered, but pretending it isn't. I just don't care. I'm not invested in the Bo Burnham story at all. I wish nothing against him. I don't wish. If he seems to be talking about genuine mental health problems in this, I hope he's doing all right, man, genuinely. But this is terrible. I hated this musical film soundtrack, whatever. It's unfunny, it's pretentious. I think Welcome to the Internet is Uncle Adam's core. And the weird thing about this was I watched this and hated it. I really hated it. And I wasn't angry. I wasn't like, I'm gonna tweet about this. I was just like, oh, that's really disappointing. I feel like I've had a bad day now because I've watched this. But then the weeks go on, and loads of my mates, loads of my family, whatever, loved this thing. People of the internet loved it, and I was like isolated almost. I was sitting there like, am I wrong? like, but I did like rehear tracks later, and no, I just don't get it. I don't get it at all, and that's okay. I know I'm right. I know everyone's wrong who liked this. You know, if you liked it, all power to you, but you're wrong. Anyway, moving on. I just wanted to rant about Inside, man. I hate this. It's a total zero. Cool. Next was Hommy, Mach Hommy. Pray for Haiti. This was really good. This is really really good. Absolutely one of the best hip hop albums of the year. One of the best albums of the year. For me, just completely. It's just the production on the thing is so good. I've not actually listened to much of their stuff at all. So this has made me kind of go, oh, I really do need to delve into this because this is really, really good. The opener, that beat, I like it's one of these albums where the opener's so good that you find yourself being like, I don't know if I can play track 2 yet. I might just listen to track 1 3 times and then listen to the rest of the album. Folly of Jews, the bass line on that thing's incredible. Stella Ray is so great. This album's so good. Next up, we're in June now. We are in June, and we have this Caroline Shaw and So Percussion again. Let the Soil play its important part, play its simple part. This is really really nice. I preferred this to the previous. So the the previous one, I'll set this down. The previous album Caroline Shaw did with So and Percussion, with So Percussion, sorry, Narrow Sea, was more like classical, more like typical neoclassical stuff, whereas this one is more like poppy. It features a lot of Shaw's vocals, with these kind of just like minimalist piano, just like nice sort of piano, just like nice piano chords, and then sort of So Percussion basically bring whatever to the table. Like sometimes it's proper hard hitting like abrasive drums, and sometimes it's like Tibetan bowls. It's so diverse. Uh, there's there's a cover of ABBA's "Lay All Your Love on Me." That, well, I say it's a cover. It's more like a rework. It's so different. It's for voice and like marimba. I think it's marimba, but man, it's so good. It sums up like her approach. She's clearly trying to work through this idea of like how can pop music inform sort of classical, for want of a better word. Like how can sort of pop sensibilities be brought into her own work. I just think this is stunning. I love throwing this on. Um just something nice and easy. Her voice is great. 100% would recommend this. Don't know if it's in my top 10. Possibly. If it is, it's like 10. You know what I mean? Next up, we have Blue Weekend by Wolf Alice. So I'm not a big Wolf Alice fan, but I saw a lot of people saying that this was amazing, that this was absolute album of the year. I loved it, whatever. Um, and I thought I was gonna say I agree when I heard the opener, when I heard Isn't It the Beach, with that like just driving beat and it builds and builds, and I thought this is gonna be really good. And then the rest of the album, like I don't think at any point is it really terrible or anything. It's just like it never hits, if that makes sense. Like it constantly has these like, big walls of like guitar chords, but they're never like quite shoegazy and never quite like abrasive. The drums are never amazing. The vocals, her singing is really good, but the lyrics are, whatever. So I think it's overproduced. I think the whole album's really overproduced in the sense that these songs either needed to be more emotional, abrasive, bare bones, basic songs, or they needed to do what they wanted to do, make like something really, um, kind of shoegazy and kind of like reverberated and really whatever. Then they needed to basically quit having like the guitar chords, and like having like power chords with echo on it doesn't make it like that interesting. Like some of the songs have a lot of the songs have like vocal harmonies, and for me they basically just like take away from the performance of her vocal. Like instead of me being like, oh my god, here she is singing about, her absolute heart shattered, uh I'm just listening to the pretty like thirds. It doesn't, it's like, just because you wrote and arranged something doesn't mean it's better than just the basics. If you're a singer pianist, sometimes just you and a piano is better. And even though you've written this like gorgeous orchestral and brass and drums and bass and guitar lines and everything, sometimes like just you and the piano is going to work better. And I think that's like the case for this album all over the place. Like these songs needed to either be cut back to basics, um, or they needed to lean into the studio stuff and like make it weirder and make it more interesting. Because instead it's kind of a mix of the two, and it doesn't really do either justice. And that's not to say that all vocal harmonies are bad. Like I'm not saying that there aren't like Simon and Garfunkel songs with those gorgeous harmonies that aren't absolutely heart wrenching. But I guess what I mean is it sounds again just overproduced. There's nothing bare about it. There's nothing vulnerable, I guess, or raw about any of this. And I also think on the vocals, they clearly write the lyrics first and then the vocal melodies and tried to make them fit, or wrote them separately and tried to make them fit, because like there's loads of passages in this thing where you can just tell they're trying to fit like a full sentence into what like 10 words where 3 words would have done better, or trying to make 5 words stretch out to 8 words. It's just clunky songwriting, just massively hit and miss. I think Smile was a big miss. The riff's really generic and really meh. All the greatest hits could have been this like really good like punk banger, and instead it's like just really bland. This album isn't terrible. It's just that it has like all the elements of a really really good album, but doesn't actually do them. Like the sum of its parts, it is not greater than. It is just loads of parts. Next we have Danny Elfman, Big Mess. Um, this thing is just a big mess. Like I like Danny Elfman, um, but really bad. It's really cringy. It sounds like a musical theater version of like those bands, and those artists. Like it just sounds like this really, um, clean, easy. Like, oh, it has to be really hard hitting and really abrasive, but not so abrasive that the whole family couldn't go to the gig. That's, i.e., what musical theater often is. Like, it has to be edgy, but not too edgy. Just imply edginess. There's a song called, is it Love in the Time of COVID? I think is the name of it, and I think that sums up how this album sounds. It's just like easy, like just like, ugh, come on. The happier sort of pop tunes on this thing are better, um, but the like heavy stuff is just a big miss for me, like totally unlistenable. I think Danny Elfman did the Willy Wonka or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory film, like the one with Johnny Depp in it, the more recent one. Um, and from memory, he did the music for that, and it does actually sound like the bad rock songs in that the Oompa Loompas sang. Yeah, bad album. This is big mess. More like big miss. I could have just said it was a big mess, but next up in June we have Nine by Salt. This is the last vinyl I have on this list. This is really good. For those who are familiar with Salt, it's not exactly a big jump from the stuff we've heard from their previous three albums. Um, right, Untitled, Rise, and Five. I got Nine. It's the only one I own at the moment because the sort of, I don't want to call it a gimmick, but I guess it is. The marketing gimmick was that it would only be on streaming services and only be available for 99 days. So I luckily got the vinyl before it disappeared. I think you can still find it easily enough, but it doesn't quite live up to the first two albums for me. But even at their worst, they're just a really good. Um, I was gonna say band, but collective or whatever. Just a really good sound. The Little Sims feature is really great. Everyone should listen to Salt. They're a really good band. You can't really go wrong with them. It's kind of like a lot of it sounds actually quite like MIA, for me, although a lot less experimental. Next we have Doja Cat's Planet Her. This is this is a really good pop album. Just like so fun, so many bangers. Most of the production is that kind of Moonbaton, sort of like slower than house. It's that type beat. I don't know if my beatboxing will translate well over this, but if you're in the room, you're pretty blown away. But over the mic, it mightn't sound as good. It's just like really nice production. Nothing too experimental, nothing too weird. Just really good sort of bubblegum pop. Woman is a banger and a half. What's the song called? Kiss Me. Is also a banger. You know, the lyrics are mainly stuff like what's that lyric? I heard from a friend of a friend that that dick is a 10 out of 10. You know, can't go wrong with that, can you? My only criticism, um, this isn't in my top 10 for the record. Just not particularly, cutting edge. It's just like a nice, pretty good pop album. It's not going to rattle any feathers, but it is going to make you go, yeah, good tune. My only sort of criticisms is like there's a couple of songs, like I Don't Do Drugs, that sound absolutely like a Charlie XCX song. Um, and I don't know, is it the vocal melody? Is it the production on the voice? I'm not 100% sure what it is, but like it just sounds like a rejected Charlie XCX song. Next, we have Japanese Breakfast, Jubilee. This was really good. It was like a sort of synthier, poppier version of like Mitski. Just kind of like really emotional, nostalgic stuff. It's kind of got that like Julian Baker sound where I don't know if it's the voice, I don't know if it's the songwriting, but like it just makes you like kind of emotional. Even if it's like an upbeat pop tune, you just find yourself being like, oh god, god, like I remember. Instead of being like the when she sings about the good times, you find yourself being like, oh, the good times. Yeah, I don't really have much to add in this one. Just a really nice, sad little nostalgic album. Good, really good. Lastly, in June we have the instant classic, Tyler the Creator, Call Me If You Get Lost. Yeah, genuinely instant classic, and I my only thing with this album is I still can't decide if it's his best to me. Like Igor blew me away when I first listened to that. Like I remember sticking on earphones and just like the start of Igor kicking in. I remember really distinctly where I was when I stuck earphones in and stuck Igor on for the first time, and I was like absolutely floored. I was like, oh my god. Um, Whereas I wasn't as floored by Call Me If You Get Lost, and I don't know. like now it's the one. I mean, Tyler somehow, and like I didn't think I listened to this album that much, but yeah, I think he was my third most streamed artist this year, on Spotify, and like clearly I was listening to this really routinely, but wasn't even thinking about it. The production's amazing. Some of the mixing is rough as hell, and like that's pretty integral to everything Tyler's made, sort of post Odd Future. So from sort of Cherry Bomb onwards, Flower Boy and stuff, you like the mixing has kind of progressively got worse and worse. I don't know what it is. I don't. I think it's definitely got to be a style thing. I think he's like likes the idea of it being a bit rough and being a bit thrown together. It doesn't sound like I Tyler's production on that early All Future stuff, and even some of his production for like Frank Ocean, implies he's clearly a very good producer. So I assume that some of the mixing choices being kind of very raw is like an actual artistic choice rather than him not knowing what he's doing. But there is definitely like entire tracks in this where I'm like, I would love to hear the actual recordings, because like clearly buried under those like drums and stuff is like some really nice chords or some really nice whatever, and you can't really hear it. I think the back half of this album is better than the first half. I mean, you know all this. I think this is most people's that I've seen. This is probably the most popular favorite album of the year. I would say even more than Donda and stuff. I think this is probably what from what I've seen most people's number one that I see in like Facebook groups and stuff. Yeah, just a really good album. But I don't know if it's my favorite of his. I still think that might be Igor.